Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a stunning and troubling report in the New York Times that establishes, to the extent that accurate reporting ever establishes, that the United States has misled and misstated the facts to the U.S. Supreme Court in the very important pending emergency application in Illinois v. Trump. Okay, to remind you of the case, and it's the one I've characterized from the moment it was filed as the big test and moment of truth for the Supreme Court. This is the assertion by the Trump administration that it has authority under 10 U.S.C. 12406 to federalize the National Guard in Illinois. Oh, and by the way, to send in also some National Guard from Texas who seem to be only too glad to mess around in the backyard of their Democratic state to the north. And the district court said, no rebellion here, no inability for normal forces to actually combat the problem. They can handle it. And the Seventh Circuit said the same and affirmed, and then it went up. Seventh Circuit very clearly, this ain't a rebellion, went up to the Supreme Court, and the U.S.'s first argument there is you can't review this at all. It's a case that, while on emergency application, poses the really serious risk that the Supreme Court greenlight deference to Trump in a way that he could use to make all kinds of mischief, including with the election. That's what's so important about it. And this is also the case that turned on a dime when the Supreme Court issued supplementary orders. I had that long talk with Marty Lederman that many of you saw. The supplementary orders said, really focus on this third clause of the 10 U.S.C. 12406 that says that the president's unable with regular forces to handle the problems on the ground. Okay. So we learn, I've never seen anything quite like this, and I'm not sure exactly how the court can handle it. The Times, knowing that this is the focus, went and did its own investigation of the facts, analyzed the police tapes and everything that happened. And man, oh man, what a government we have. It seems to be basically lying through its teeth. Maybe it's just massaged things on their end, but maybe it's been flat out deceptive. But the big point is the record now in front of the Supreme Court, based on what the administration has said, is just wrong on a critical point. The critical point goes exactly to this idea. Can the government handle with their regular forces? And the regular forces, by the way, the new argument that the court asked the parties to brief is, does that even include the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, so that, they wouldn't have even, begun to try to make that effort. But the Solicitor General of the United States told the court that there was an inability, or at least, told them there's problems, and that's enough for not able to do it with the regular forces, about getting the normal, and this was the Chicago Police Department, to respond. And here's what the Solicitor General told the Supreme Court. There was an important police radio call, and federal agents requested assistance, and a Chicago police officer said, we're not responding. And the Solicitor General tells the Supreme Court that initial refusal to respond was emblematic of a troubling pattern where local forces provide a tepid response at best when federal officers are attacked and obstructed. Still wouldn't begin to prove that the federal forces themselves can't respond and do their job, but that's the factual predicate. If, you credit the Times' really meticulous and comprehensive reporting, it's bullshit. The mind reels at trying to think how exactly to sort of handle this. But the Times went through it, and they've just got it wrong. They say that they imply that it took a couple hours to respond to the call for assistance, but they misstate when the call occurred by a couple hours, and they make it seem as if the entire police force was reluctant. In fact, it was one police officer, and most importantly, the Chicago police showed up within 7 minutes of the call. So it's just totally cuts the other way. But the Supreme Court in general, it can take judicial notice of facts outside the record, but it really doesn't. It takes the record and the facts as set out by the parties. And even more than that, the Solicitor General's word and assertion on the facts is just supposed to be complete 24 karat gold. That's true of the whole Department of Justice. And remember last week I had a whole, head turning, Substack because Halligan and the department had come in to basically mislead about the record with the grand jury and the indictments of Comey and James. This is the Solicitor General before the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm a fuddy-duddy, I guess. I clerked twice up there, but the notion that they be caught red-handed on such a critical fact, simply distorting would be a very, very gentle way to put it, is A, wild, but B, repugnant, and so indicative of the absolute degradation of the department, even at the Supreme Court of this administration. Now, the Supreme Court reads the papers, and this will somehow come to their attention. And, it certainly could result in a calling on the carpet and saying what the hell is going on, et cetera, to the SG. Typically, you just take the record as it is. And by the way, the final brief, even the supplemental final brief, was filed 9 days ago. It seems very likely to me that the opinion writing, and there's probably more than one on either side, is already much advanced here. And we're kind of way far down the road to actually, double back on what the facts are. But we know from that supplementary order that it's very likely that the focus of the opinion is going to be on exactly this question: can the regular forces of the U.S. do the job? Now, they may well go for the interpretation that that Marty Lederman proffered to them, saying that has to include the military folks, in which case it's all, the U.S.'s efforts are completely blown out of the water because they haven't even, attempted that. But they may not, or there may be some opinion writers who may not, and who are basically saying one way we have to defer to the executive is in the executive's assessment of whether or not they're able. I mean, we can't, and this is true, you can't say, unable means that if you go in, they have a bomb that's going to kill all officers. Unable to has to mean seriously impeded. Now, I don't think even under the U.S.'s version of events that the Chicago police were deterred, it shows it. So, there's this threshold legal interpretation question of would that be enough? But now we have this supplementary factual question of did this happen? And it's a pivotal fact in the brief. I haven't summarized it at great length, but you go through the Times article. I think it really completely leaves the assertion of the Solicitor General to the Supreme Court of the United States without a leg to stand on. So again, within the culture of the Supreme Court and the SG, but just more generally, this is the highest court of the land, the one official in government who speaks to that highest court. Everything has to be pristine And we have a really critical fact that's just been misstated. It's not clear what even happens here. My best guess is, I mean, some people in the Supreme Court could say, well, okay, that's what the New York Times says, but here's what the Solicitor General says, and that's in the record, and the New York Times isn't. But, that would seem to be so kind of Alice in Wonderland, just pretending. It's pretty clear, even for people who hate the New York Times, what happened and what didn't happen. So you have to figure in some way this plays into the case, but more generally, the fact of its occurrence, it would be if the Democrats had power in Congress, it would absolutely be meat to now invest. What the hell happened here? Did you guys knowingly obfuscate or lean in that direction? Were you completely innocent because this is what your clients told you? But this is really, really bad. And just a single episode like this. I remember a time where the court's confidence in the SG abated a bit because of certain overly aggressive legal arguments. But the facts and a misstatement on the facts is like completely beyond the pale. So we'll see how this plays out. We'll see if some of the really conservative members of the court just like pretend, it's all made up by the New York Times. But there's no specific, the Supreme Court could take judicial notice or issue an order or whatever. But this is a episode for which there's no real blueprint. Typically, there are assertions, they have it wrong because the other side makes them. But a big newspaper investigative report that basically demonstrates it, that's like a crisis for the whole government, or it should be if the Supreme Court concludes that the U.S. misled it in an important fact. So we'll see how it plays out. But the fact of it alone is just more illustration of how completely broken this whole government and Department of Justice is, and how their advocacy has become instead just weighted in favor of supporting a president, not the country, and in which they take their oaths to the court and their duty of candor pretty cavalierly, even in what appear now in the Supreme Court. Again, I want to be clear, maybe it's an innocent mistake, but it's a mistake, and a big honking mistake, and it's so much should not have happened. We'll see what, if anything, the Supreme Court does in response. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.